second.
You're streaming on YouTube?
YouTube, yes, a YouTube channel.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. We have three subscribers.
Who are they?
I'm not sure. Hold on one second. Okay, you are right now live streaming on YouTube.
Streaming on YouTube?
Yes. YouTube, yes, a YouTube channel.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
Wait, why am I
Who's?
hearing an echo?
I don't know. Three subscribers. Oh, hang on a
Who are
second.
they?
It's an echo because that was the YouTube screen that I was on. Okay,
Oh,
Rabbi, I'm going to be headed out and enjoy the class. Okay, I'm going to make you the co-host, and the floor is yours.
okay, are we ready to go?
All you.
Okay, so today we are going to do the third Mishnah in Brachos. Third Mishnah. We've been discussing Shema. So this discusses um, the position that you should be in while reciting Shema. So let me pull it up on my screen here. Okay, so this is the third Mishnah in Brachos. The top right of the screen here. It says, I'll read through it and then I'll explain a little bit, and then we'll see where we go from there. Beishamai Omer, Beishamai says, Be'erev kol adam yatu v'yikru, at evening time, when saying the evening Shema, everybody should recline, and read the Shema. V'boker yamdu, and in the morning they should stand. You should, when saying the morning Shema, you should say it standing up. Shenemar, as the verse says, it was shach b'cha uvkumecha. When you lie down and when you get up. When you lie down, it's referring to the evening Shema. That's the source that we say the evening Shema. We say when we lie down, so we learn out that you should say it lying down, and you should when you get up in the morning. But again, it's starting with the morning Shema, and it uses the word standing. Kumecha, kum is standing up. So that's Beis Shammai's opinion. Uveis Hillel Omer, Beis Hillel says, Kol Adam Koire Kedarko, everybody should read in their manner, meaning whatever position they're in or interested in being in. Shenemar, as it says, and when you go on the way. So why did it say v'shach b'chol kumecha? B'shash b'nei adam shochem u'b'shash b'nei adam omdim. He's supposed to recite Kriya Shema at the time when people are laying down and at the time when people are standing up. Sorry, when people are getting up. Okay, so basically outside what's going on here. So we have a argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel of what the position one should be in while saying Shema. And the argument boils down to this. We have, we know the source for Shema in the Torah. The source of the evening and the morning Shema is because the pasuk says you should say these words, Shema, the words of Shema, b'shach b'cha, when you're going to sleep, uvkumecha, and when you're getting up. And we've discussed that in the previous Mishnayos, in the previous Mishnahs. That's the source. V'shach b'cha, when you go to sleep, is the source to saying Kriya Shema at night. Right? We discussed what the time of going to sleep is, with the first third of the night, the whole night. Uvkumecha, that's the source for the morning Shema that you say when you get up, right? I don't know if you guys remember, it was either you have to say it right by sunrise, or some people say you could say it for up to 3 hours because the kings, the princes get up to 3 hours into the day. So that's the source for Kriya Shema. Those are the previous Mishnayos. Beis Shammai says we learn out an additional law from these same words. He says the Torah could have said in the morning and night. Why didn't it say Shema in the morning, say Shema at night? Why do you use the words when you get up and when you go to sleep? Why did I have to say it that way? So Beis Shammai says it's to teach us a secondary halacha, secondary rule. And that is about the position which you should be in when saying Shema. That we should say to v'shach b'cha when you're lying down, since the source of the evening Shema, so the word lying down, we say you should say it while lying down. That should be the position you're in. According to Beis Shammai, when one gets up to the Kriya Shema, at night he should recline, he should lay down, like on his side, like this. Like we do at the Passover Seder, I guess. Uvkumecha is the source for the morning Shema. When you get up, that's the word. When you get up, like when you get up in the morning. So again, it could have said in the morning. Why did it say when you get up? To teach us that you should get up and say Shema standing up. That's Beis Shammai's opinion. We don't follow Beis Shammai. That's a rule. We always follow Beis Hillel. So what does Beis Hillel say? Beis Hillel says, if you are right that the Torah is trying to teach me that you have to say Shema in these various positions, then what's the next word? Torah says you say Shema when lying down, right, at night, in the when you get up, and when you go on the way, when you go out to travel. What is that word for? That's not a time when we say Shema. You're not required every time you go travel. You're not required to say Shema. It's only twice a day, night and a day. What's when you go on the way? So as Hillel says, but that's coming to teach us is that that it's really coming to teach us the position of Shema, that you can say Shema while traveling. Idea being when someone's traveling, they're not standing or lying down, they're walking along. So it's teaching us that you can say Shema in any position, even while walking along. You can say the Shema, and that's the law. That's the halacha. You can say Shema while walking along. I'll throw in a small disclaimer. The Talmud tells us that the first two verses, the actual verse Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and then Baruch Shem, the next one we say with silently, the one we say quietly, those should be not said while walking, in order for us to be able to focus, because since those are very important lines and they need focus to be said properly, you shouldn't say that while walking along. So you should be in one position, whether it's standing or sitting, but you shouldn't do that while walking along. But the Shema in general can be said in any position. It could be said lying down, it could be said standing up, it could be said walking, and that's the law, that's the halacha, like Beis Hillel. One small note: what does Beis Shammai do with the V'lech L'cha V'derech? What do they say that word is there for? So Rambam explains, and it could be this is in the Talmud. I didn't see it. I didn't notice that it's teaching us a different law, which is that you're only required to say Shema when you're like traveling, in the sense that you're not involved in a mitzvah. You're just you're traveling along. It doesn't mean only for traveling. You could be doing anything. You could be sitting in your house. But the idea being that Beis Shammai says we learn out from here a concept we call in Hebrew, comes up all over the place. Ha'osik b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. One who is involved in a mitzvah is not obligated in other mitzvahs. So if one is involved in a mitzvah, and the exact parameters of this I don't know, but if one is involved in a mitzvah, or at least certain types of mitzvahs, he is absolved from saying Shema at that time. If for whatever reason while doing this mitzvah overlaps with his time period for saying Shema and he can't do both, then he's absolved from Shema. One who's involved in a mitzvah is patur from other mitzvahs. For example, if somebody's involved with burying a dead person, which is a mitzvah, there's no one there to bury him, you're burying him. We don't say take a break, say Shema, and then go back. You're supposed to be fully involved in that mitzvah. We don't say pause that mitzvah for Shema. One who's involved in mitzvahs, not obligated in other mitzvahs. Again, in terms of practical halacha, there's a lot of parameters to this. But that's the idea, and that's why they say that's what Beis Shammai does with the V'lech L'cha V'derech. That it's just coming to teach me that you only say Shema when you're like traveling, meaning you're not doing a mitzvah. Beis Hillel agrees to that concept, even though they use V'lech L'cha V'derech to teach me that you could say Shema in any position, but they must learn it out somewhere else. I didn't look up the entire discussion for the back and forth. But that's just a basic thing on this Mishnah. The Rashi, we had mentioned last week that we follow Beis Hillel in general, and one of the reasons given is because they would always teach Beis Shammai's opinion, and they would teach it first, out of deference to Beis Shammai. They would show respect for them, even though they argued. They would show instead of just saying their own opinion as if that was the only way in town. They would say, "This is Beis Shammai's opinion. We disagree for these reasons, and we think it's otherwise." And Rashi over there on that, Gemara that says that he references our Mishnah as an example of that. That in our Mishnah, what does the Mishnah start with? It starts with the opinion of Beis Shammai, just like we said. They always said Beis Shammai's opinion first, and then it says Beis Hillel's opinion second, and they respond to Beis Shammai that you can't learn out the verses the way you're learning them because we have this word of Lech L'Chavadar. So that is an example. Rashi quotes this as an example of why we follow the opinion of Beis Hillel. Brian, are we good with all that? Did I stuff in too much over there?
No, it's great, Rabbi. I'm following just fine.
Okay, great. So let's read the rest of this Mishnah. We didn't read the end part of it. Okay, I'm going to pull it back on my screen. Okay, now we're at the bottom part of the Mishnah. I can't get the Hebrew and the English on the same time on the screen. So I'll do the Hebrew first and then the English. Amar Rabbi Tarfon said, Ani hayisi vav aderech, I was once traveling, v'yitesi likros, and I leaned, it was evening time, and I leaned to read Shema, Kidavei Beis Shammai, in accordance with the opinion of Beis Shammai. I put myself in danger, mipnei listim of robbers or bandits. I put myself in danger. Amrulo, his colleague said to him, you would have been appropriate, I don't know exactly how to translate that, for you to die. For you violated the words of Beis Hillel. Right, let's look at it in English. It's over here. Once I was coming on the road, when I stopped and reclined to recite Shema in accordance with the statement of Beis Shammai, although Rabbi Tarfon was the disciple of Beit Hillel, he thought that fulfilling the mitzvah in accordance with the opinion of Beis Shammai would be more meticulous, fulfilling the mitzvah acceptable to all opinions. Yet in doing so, I endangered myself due to highwaymen, list them, right, robbers, bandits, whatever you want to call them, who were cross travelers. The sages said to him, "You deserve to be in a position where you were liable with your life as you transgress the statement of Beis Hillel." The statement will be explained in the Gemara. Okay, but we don't have the Gemara. We're not doing the Gemara. So the idea being that since we paskin, like we follow Beis Hillel, we always follow the opinion of Beis Hillel, but he basically put himself in danger. He was traveling and he paused his travels in a dangerous place. He paused and took a time out to lay down on the floor and say the Shema. So he followed the Beis Hillel, and he followed the opinion of Beis Shammai. Now this works according to Beis Hillel also, right? It's not the Beis Hillel says you can't recline. Beis Hillel agrees you can recline. They just say you're not obligated to. And over here, he put himself in danger to try to make sure he fulfills the mitzvah, even according to Beit Shammai. And the rabbis took umbrage to that. He said that's not appropriate to put yourself in danger for that. And if your danger would have actually materialized, we would be able to say it was justified because you were following the opinion of Beis Shammai against the words of Beis Hillel. So this is a fascinating story. It illustrates to us that the idea that, when the law is one way, when the rabbis tell us one thing, the rabbis tell us over here the law is like Beis Hillel. That was last week's class. We mentioned last time's class, and it was a few weeks ago that we follow Beis Hillel. Right? The story was that we were arguing back and forth for a while. And then finally, a heavenly voice came out and said they're both the words of God, but we follow Beis Hillel. Whatever exactly that means, that they're both the word of God. We decided then we don't want to get into it. Not going to get into it now. So the rabbi said over there, they came out with the conclusion we follow Beit Hillel. So to go and make a purpose of fulfilling Beit Shammai, even though you're not wrong according to Beit Hillel, meaning Beit Hillel agrees you can lie down. It's not like this is something that wouldn't work in Beit Hillel and only in Beit Shammai. But by making a point of following Beit Shammai against the words of the rabbis who tell us we follow Beit Hillel, he was considered wrong for doing that, and especially in the situation of danger, by putting himself in danger to do that. The sages are telling us he would have been justified. It would have been justified had he indeed the danger materialized. The Yerushalmi, right? We have the Mishnah. We're the Mishnah, right? There's the Talmud, right? There's two Talmuds. There's the Babylonian Talmud, which was completed around the year 400. Around 400 in the 400s. And there's the Jerusalem Talmud, right? Basically, after the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, the rabbis they moved their courts to the Galilee, to northern Israel, to Tiberias, that area, Tzipori, northern Israel. And they had courts there that were a continuation of the courts that were there before the destruction of the temple. That's actually where the mission was completed. In northern Israel, that's where Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who compiled the Mishnah, where he had his courts and his stuff, his schools. So that the sages there continued. They didn't stop with the conclusion of the Mishnah. They continued to expound on the Mishnah, and they eventually came up with the Jerusalem Talmud. Then we have the Babylonian Talmud. It's called in Hebrew the Talmud Bavli. That was made in Bavel, in Babylon, where the bulk of the Jews were exiled after the second destruction. The truth is they were really there before. Right? The first temple, when it was destroyed, was the Jews there were exiled to Bavel, to Babylon, by Nebuchadnezzar. He was the king then. And he was the king of Bavel, Babylon, between the Tigris and the Euphrates. That's where the bulk of the communities were. And really, when the second temple was built, a lot of them stayed behind. The bulk of Jews actually stayed in Bavel. And throughout the second temple, there was a strong Jewish community in Bavel, but the leadership was always in Jerusalem. Once the second temple was destroyed, it really shifted. It started to shift to Babylon. And that's where the Babylonian Talmud is, the Talmud Bavli, which is what we sort of follow. We generally go with the Talmud Bavli. That was sort of like the one that was last and most authoritative. But there is also Jerusalem Talmud, and there's a comment there on this Mishnah that says, we see from this story at the end here of Rabbi Tarfon, that the words there are the words of the rabbis, of the sages, are more precious than the words of the Torah. That's the words. They're more precious than the words of the Torah. And this story illustrates it because of the extreme weight we see was put on the words of the rabbis here, right? Meaning, this Rabbi Tarfon, he fulfilled Shema according to all opinions. There was no issue with his fulfillment of Shema from a Torah perspective. He fulfilled his Torah obligation of Shema. And we see he was taken to task here for not fulfilling the words of the rabbis, even though he was fulfilling it according to all the rabbis also. But the rabbis said that we follow Beis Hillel, and by not sticking with that, he was violating the words of the rabbis. We see how much weight our mission is putting on that, on following the rabbis. So the Talmud there, the Talmud Yerushalmi says, we see from here how precious the words of the rabbis are. They're not taken lightly. The Talmud says they're more precious than the words of the Torah. What does it mean they're more precious? So I found a commentary of the name of Shushan Betzalel, published in around 1940. He explains that because the Torah is a little hard to relate to, if you just straight up read the Bible, to try to relate to and learn what Jewish Torah life is from by reading the Bible is a little difficult. It's a little hard to take that Bible and apply it straight up. I'm going to read the verse in Leviticus, or Numbers, or Deuteronomy, Devarim, wherever. To take the verses and try to learn life lessons and learn how to live from reading the Bible is very difficult. It's not easily taken down to that level, so to speak. Let me stop my share screen. The Bible is not written in that way, and that was by design. God could have done whatever he wanted. That's how he wrote the Bible. The sages come along with and they give flavor. They make it relatable to us people. And it's not like they went either and they read the Bible and got there. When God gave we've discussed this before, there were two Torahs given. God gave the written Torah to Moses and he gave the oral Torah to Moses. And Moses passed it down to Joshua, to Yeshua. Yeshua gave it to the elders gave it to the judges. It was passed down from generation to generation until the times of the Mishnah and the Talmud when it was written down. But basically that takes this Bible, the written Torah, and it gives it that flavor and that relatability that we have. So that's at least how the Shushan Betzalel is explaining this idea of the rabbis are telling us that the words of the sages of the Chazal are more important, are more precious than the words of the Torah, because they provide that life spirit, so to speak, to the Torah. They make it understandable. And really, this is not just the process that was done with the Mishnah and the Talmud, which we generally call those group of rabbis Chazal. It really goes on through generations, because it's continually explained. More details are added. Also every generation is different in terms of being able to relate to the Torah. What we could relate to now is not necessarily the same as what they could have related to 1,200 years ago or 1,000 years ago. So they're always adding more, and the rabbis are the medium that take that Torah message, not their own message. They take that Torah message, which if you just read the Torah is a little hard to get, and they're the ones who bring it to the masses. They're the ones who make it relatable. So in that way, they're chavim, and that's why the Mishnah here is saying it was so important to uphold what they say. If they say we follow Beis Hillel, it's very important to treat that respectfully and to honor that, because of the idea that they're the ones who take the Torah and make it and bring it to the people, make it understandable by the people. I'll give one example of this. It's just a random example from this week's parsha. Right, this week we're reading Achreimus Kedoshim. That's the Torah portion of this week. So one of the laws, one of the mitzvot, commandments in Kedoshim, in this week that we read this, we're going to read this Shabbos, is not to plow with an ox and a donkey together. You can't use, if you need two animals to pull your plow, you can't use an ox and a donkey in the same yoke to pull your plow. So what is this? Just like a random law? Like what's going on? So the rabbis, I'm not sure who this comes from, but one of the explanations given is because an ox chews its cud, right? So what it chews its cud, meaning it eats, and then the food goes down to its stomach, it regurgitates it back into the mouth and chews it again, and it sends it down to a different stomach. That's how oxes eat. You ask a farmer. So what could happen is you can feed your donkey and your ox, and they'll eat their food, and then a half hour later, whatever, I don't know the timing, he'll be eating again, right? Because he brings it up from the inside, The ox brings it up from the inside, and he starts chewing as if he's eating again. Now your donkey doesn't do it. Donkeys don't chew their cud. So your donkey looks over at the ox, they're both plowing together next to each other, and he sees him eating, and he says, hey, why are you feeding him and not feeding me? He feels bad. So the Torah is teaching us that sensitivity by saying you can't plow with them together. You have to be sensitive to their feelings. Well, the more so how sensitive you have to be to other people's feelings. That's just a small illustration that you take the Torah, and it's like, I don't know what's like going on over here. And then the sages come, the rabbis come, and they're the ones who sort of make it relatable to us. That's one example. This is true on a much more general level. That just the Torah gives us what we call a hashkafas hachayim, an outlook on life. The Torah, there's a Torah way to live. Torah, it's not that really, and I'm not talking about the commandments. I'm not talking about there's 613 commandments. You have to do this, you have to do that, you're not allowed to do that. I'm talking about a certain approach to life, to a value system. And to just read the Bible and get that value system is very difficult, to impossible. And the sages are the ones who take that value system and they flesh it out, and they bring sources in the Torah. They don't just like say it on their own. There'll be examples in the Torah, but that value system, in order to get it, you can't just read it from the 5 books of Moses. It's the sages who bring that to us, which is why, again, the Yerushalmi was saying the words are so precious. I'll close with one other illustration of this in Chazal, in our sages. So the Talmud says, Tractate Makos, call out for Talmud Trek, anyone who's considering you'll be doing Makos, which is the sources. It says, how foolish are people who stand in front of a Torah scroll and don't stand in front of the rabbis? Because the Torah says 40 lashes and the rabbis tell you it's 39. Right? What's going on there is if you look in the verse, certain sins are punishable by lashes in court. So how many lashes? It says arba'im b'mispar, 40 by number. That's the word in the Torah. That's in the books of Moses. So simply speaking, that means you should give 40 lashes. The rabbis come along and tell us that no, it means the number which gets you to 40. So if you get 39 lashes, the next number you count, they would count before each one. The next number you count is 40. So you can do 39, you count 40, that's it. You got to 40. You don't have to give the 40th. You have to count to 40. Marsha, on that Talmud, in that Gemara, he explains that it's a little tangential. He says, like, people think the rabbis, all they do is make life hard for us. So this is an example. No, they're also, sometimes they make it easier for us. They tell you it's 39, not 40. But the Ran, he explains this idea. So in other words, the Gemara says, how foolish are people who stand before the Torah, not before the sages? As if the sages have some greater role, in a sense, in the Torah. He says the same idea. He says that if not for the sages, the Torah would be a scroll rolled up in a corner somewhere. Nobody would see it. Nobody would look at it. The rabbis come along and they explain it. So what's he saying? He's saying the same idea, that if you just have the Bible, the 5 books of Moses, they're so hard to relate to straight up. You just read them without any commentary, without the rabbinic explanations. Try to learn how to live straight from reading the Bible without any rabbinic intervention. It's not going to be, you're going to miss a lot. It's not going to be relatable. You're going to miss a lot of important lessons. It's the sages that come along, the rabbis who come along, and they add that depth and meaning to the Torah, and they change it from being this book that nobody's interested in to something that's really meaningful and something that's relatable and something that people are interested in. So again, the same idea that the words of the rabbis are so important and vital, in that they take that lesson of the Torah and they bring it to the people. Of course, it's always the same Torah, but they provide that medium to have it relatable and understandable, which is why their words are so important, as we see at the end of our Mishnah. Okay, Brian, you have anything to ask on that, discuss about that? Any thoughts on that?
I have just one question, Rabbi.
Okay,
I heard it taught somewhere, and I can't remember where, that while right now we hold like Beis Hillel, after the Messiah comes, we'll hold like Beis Shammai.
correct.
Are you familiar with that teaching?
I heard the same teaching. I also, I came up as I was preparing these classes with Bisham Hill. I also am not sure what the source is, but I have heard the same thing as you. So I think there is a real source for that. I don't know what the reason is, and I don't know what the source is, but I can try to see if I can find more on that topic.
When I heard that, I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, it is definitely fascinating. And again, I did find the Mishnah, a passage in the Talmud that discusses why we follow Beis Hillel, but I don't know why we're going to follow Beis Shammai ultimately, and what the source is for that. But I have heard the same thing as you.
Thank you.
I apologize, I can't provide more information than that.
Oh, that's fine, Rabbi. That's fine.
Okay, so I think we're going to hold it here. Appreciate your coming on, Brian, and I guess we'll see you next week, maybe in a bigger crowd.
Thank you so much for your time, Rabbi.
Okay, have a great day.